please remember to keep yourselves muted unless there is something that you would like to say so that we don't get any feedback. All right, so this evening's webinar is on how to, in terms of checking for understanding as a follow-up to, I believe it was last week's, although it seems like much longer than last week ago, why series on checking for understanding. So it's just me this evening. So by the end of this webinar, faculty will be able to examine ideas for building checkpoints during their VCS or OCS and identify at least 2 strategies to implement in their sessions to check for students' learning and understanding. So we're going to go ahead and actually start with one way to check for understanding in your classroom by partaking in it ourselves. So I'm going to go ahead and share this Jamboard with you in just a second. So what you need to do is tell us one thing, what you already know about this topic, and then another thing, which is what do you want to know about this topic. At the end of the session this evening, we will identify what you learned about this topic. So this is just one way, again, that you can check for knowledge with your students. So just give me one sec here and I'll get the link. Okay, so everyone should be able to click on that link and access it. And I'll go ahead and share it on the screen. So please do not mark here. I'm going to go ahead and put a little sticky note because just as a reminder. So please go ahead and click on that link that I put in the chat, and either via text or sticky note, you can access it and leave feedback on what you already know. Oh, stop trying to move my sticky note there. I think that's Professor DeVito. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know.
That sounds like something he'd do.
It is I.
All right, so I'll give you about 2 minutes to provide feedback on what you already know about this topic and what you want to learn about it on the Jamboard. And then we will continue on with our session this evening. And there are 12 of you in here besides myself, so I expect people to participate. All right, so what do I already know about this topic? We have a few here. We have it is crucial to checking for understanding frequently so students don't get lost and keep getting lost as the lecture goes on. Very good. Directly asking questions that determine what students have learned. Absolutely. And yes, checking for understanding is very, very important. What do I want to know about this topic? More methods. I love the exit ticket. Yeah, that's one of my favorites too. Assess using a Jamboard. Absolutely. Something you already know, that it engages the students during the process. We have some really good ones here. Thank you. Another thing you want to know or learn about it is always willing to learn new tips, tricks, and ideas. Okay. Very good. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and move forward just in the interest of time. So to reiterate here, what checking for understanding is it's simply the instructor continually verifying that students are learning what is being taught while it is being taught and not after. So 10 maxims of formative assessment that you can use in terms of CFUs. It's faceless, so it can be anonymous. It helps facilitate learning. It includes feedback, and it's feed forward in terms of using that real-time data to inform how the rest of the class lesson progresses, whether you have to stop and reinforce something, or maybe they've already got it and it's time to move, ahead. It just allows for that. Focus on learning, flexibility, fast, frequent, friendly, and fun. So we have different types of checking for understanding. We covered some of these last week. We're going to reiterate them and then expand upon ways to do this. So we have verbal strategies. Students share their responses to their classmates or to the whole class. Written strategies, students can reflect on a question, statement, or problem and write their response, position, or solution. It can be either shared or not with classmates, but it is always shared with the instructor. And this is where the faceless or the potential for it being anonymous comes into play. And then a third is a demonstration strategy. And in this type of strategy, students complete tasks, provide and explain examples, or create deliverables or any other type of learning artifact to demonstrate their knowledge and content of mastery. And keep in mind, these are just 3 types of strategies. We're just kind of scratching the surface here. So which strategy do you use? So effective instructors use a combination of all 3 strategies and potentially beyond that. When instructors create and apply a specific checking for understanding strategy, the student's level of understanding can be measured by their response. And again, it's that gathering data and using it effectively, which is really key to checking for understanding, making sure that you're doing something with what you've got. So now we're going to review some tips for incorporating checking for understanding in your VCS or OCS or both. You want to make sure you set learning goals. So you want to be clear on what you are expecting students to know and be able to do by the end of the VCS or OCS. This can simply be pulling from those course learning outcomes that are specific to the week based on the assignment that's being due, or you can break them down to a lower level, but really taking everything back to those course learning outcomes and setting the learning goals based off of those really shows students that you understand what you're talking about and that everything they're doing is meaningful and purposeful and ties back into what they are supposed to be able to do by the end of the course or session. Designing enough checkpoints. You want to provide several opportunities for students to demonstrate their progress toward the achievement of the learning goal. And these are just kind of set points throughout your lesson plan for that 2-hour session or longer if you're teaching one of our weekend or professional courses, to make sure that you're stopping, you're giving the students a chance to switch gears, check for understanding, respond to that checking for understanding, and then moving on to that next checkpoint. You want to consider these questions before deciding which CFU you want to incorporate in your lessons. Do I want to check whether students can remember factual knowledge? Do I want to know if they understand the instructions to a task or an activity? Do I want to monitor their self-assessment on a specific learning goal? And again, this is going to really depend on the course you're teaching, the content that's being covered that week, the assignments that are due that week, or upcoming assignments, and the subject that or discipline that you're teaching within. Some require more rote memorization of factual knowledge than others. It really just depends. And you as the subject matter expert and the faculty know what's best for your own class. So classroom ideas to check for understanding. You can ask open-ended questions. So asking, do you understand, or do you have any questions? Or one that I am guilty of is, does that make sense? Can lead to misleading responses. Instead, ask questions that lead to definitive answers based on what you're covering in that specific session. Who else has questions? When you've identified a student that has not yet fully grasped a particular point, ask if anyone else is confused by the same thing. Most likely they are. Oftentimes students don't want to speak up. They feel embarrassed or that they will appear to be stupid if they don't grasp something. So if someone else doesn't grasp it and they were willing to be vulnerable and come forward with saying, yeah, I don't understand this, please ask to see if others don't, because most likely it's at least one or more students. And I've had it at times be like the entire class, but they didn't tell me until I really like checked in with them. Pop quiz. So this may be students' least favorite strategy, though giving them a quiz at the end of an exercise can be very helpful in assessing understanding. Using Kahoot or Zoom polls for this is a good idea. So you want to make sure that students know this isn't going to affect your grade. This is just checking for understanding. This isn't meant to give you anxiety. I think that really providing context and prefacing it in a positive way and using something fun or quick that sometimes is anonymous can really help students take advantage of your checking for understanding. I always thank students for asking questions so that they know it's okay. Absolutely, Professor Lebo, that's a great point. Again, creating that like safe space, nurturing learning environment is really key to getting students comfortable with being open about something that they're not understanding. Can also do a midpoint pop quiz. No need to wait until the end of the class to check for students' understanding. This is particularly true when you are covering lots of material in one session. Offer a quick quiz halfway through an exercise to make sure your students are ready to move on to the next topic you want to cover. This could be really advantageous if you have a week where it's heavy with lecture content, just because there are things that you absolutely have to share with students and show them how to do, and that they do need to memorize to be successful in the course. So doing it partway through can kind of break it up for everybody and allow for a group discussion if something isn't understood, and then you can get back to the lecture at hand. Student questions, we already touched on this a little bit, but you can ask students to write their own questions and ask their classmates for answers and clarification. You can either complete this activity using Zoom breakout rooms or as a whole class discussion. And this also helps you fall in line more with the flipped classroom model that we use here at Westcliff. It takes you away from being that, to be cliche and use this overused term, that sage on the stage, and you become more of the facilitator for the students, so they take more ownership and have more buy-in in the classroom experience and the learning process. You can also ask students to identify 2 keywords or ideas from a resource you have provided or after a discussion during the VCS or OCS, but you want to take this one step further to make the students justify their responses. And this gets them tying it back into something and not just remembering a word that you used. It really helps keep them focused and engaged in the material as much as you have control over. You can also ask them to identify 3 takeaways at the end of the VCS or the OCS. And they have to summarize those 3 key takeaways from the lesson. So again, not just remembering, but describing or reiterating that information helps it stick in their memory more, and also helps shows whether they understand it or not. And if possible, take it one step further and ask how they're going to apply what they learned to their own working context. So we did this before the lesson. You can have students write down what they already know about the subject and what they want to know. And then afterward, which we will do at the end of this session, you can have them write down what they learned. Before I move on, all the templates that you've seen so far and that you will see in this presentation are available under resources in Spoke, and I'll show you at the end of the session how to access those in Spoke. So you can download them and tweak them any way you see fit to work for your class. So don't feel that you have to reinvent the wheel on these. Like, we have those tools for you, pre-designed, downloadable, easy to edit and use on your own. You can also have students do a debate. When setting a topic with scope for discussion, you can split your class into different teams based on their opinions, or you can assign them a side. Sometimes that can be even more effective, getting them to think about the opposing side's argument, or maybe something they haven't thought about before. And then they can present their opinions or sides politely and counter the other team's arguments. if you are going to do this, it's really great to provide the framework for the debate at the end of the previous class, prior to the upcoming class that you'll be doing the debate in, and then also reiterate that at the beginning of class and giving students time to prepare for it and have really set guidelines to help keep things as respectful and structured as possible. Pretty much just to mirror how debates are done, you know, in the non-academic world, I guess, or within the academic world, if you were like on debate team or something in high school or something like that. We're going to skip this, but this is an option. You can, Dr. Shawaheda went to, I forget the name of the, I feel like it was Mentimeter. I'll look it up and put it in the chat before we get to the end. But she was able to create a QR code and then have students just focus their phones on it like you would any other QR code, and then it'll take you to the website, and then it automatically goes to like a poll or something else that can be shared with the class. So it's just a quick way to kind of break it up and do something a little different for checking for understanding. You can do think, pair, share. We've discussed this in previous light sessions. You can ask students to take 2 minutes to jot down the main takeaways of the lesson, then put students into pairs to discuss what they've learned before sharing it with the class. To make sure that you provide enough time so as to make sure all students have a chance to discuss their takeaways. As with something like the debate, you want to make sure that you budget in enough time. Maybe you don't do as many checking for understanding check-in points throughout the session for that day, but you've maybe one before, and then you provide adequate time for something like this. Rushing through it can make it confused and just ineffective. That doesn't mean that if you've done that before, or you do end up doing that, that you can't reflect on it and revise it, or that it's going to be completely ineffective. So please be brave and try things and be prepared to fail, because that's how we learn and get better, just like our students. You could do true false statements. You can create a couple of slides with a series of questions that require simple true or false responses, and then ask for volunteers to answer each statement and make sure that the students justify their response before revealing the answer, before you reveal it to them. Because again, we want to make sure that they are pulling from that knowledge that you've covered in class, or that's been covered with the course materials for that week outside of class, and that you get a sense of their understanding, not just that they're guessing or just throwing out the correct answer because they know and they're not sharing it with everyone else. You can do a team presentation. This is something like a jigsaw activity where you can place students in small groups to discuss their main takeaways and then have them present these takeaways to the rest of the class. You can use tech tools. One of the quickest ways to check for understanding is to have your students hop on their device and use one of the awesome tech tools like Quizlet, Kahoot, Poll Everywhere, WordWall, or Google Forms to show what they know. There's also a myriad of other ones out there. I do want to caution though, when you are choosing tech tools and you're checking for understanding, do make sure that it is effective for your course, and think about really how it plays into students' learning and understanding of the topic. So try to like be purposeful with your choice, not just that it's bad to choose one that looks cool and new, but think about like not just throwing it in there, but how you can use it to the most effective extent within your class. We talked about exit tickets last week a little bit and had you guys do an exit ticket. To revisit these because they're very effective. You can allow students, or exit tickets allow students to think about what they learned during the lesson, as well as the practical side of the topic covered. And this template, again, is available in Spoke, and I'll show you how to access that towards the end of the session. A little bit more about exit tickets here. About 5 minutes before the end of class, students complete reflections on their exit ticket. Students are dismissed from the VCS or OCS once they have completed and turned in their responses. This is another template that you can download from Spoke. One of the things I really love about exit tickets and just checking for understanding in general is that When I'm teaching, I use them as proof of participation in the class, and I base the student's participation grade on their partaking in each of these, basically checking for understanding check-in points or activities I'm having them do. Just makes it really easy and very objective. And then they know that they have to do it to be able to get those points for participation. You can give them a problem-solving task. So you can present students with a common misconception or frequent procedural error, and you can see if they can identify the flaw or error and even better correct it. So this is really getting them to use those critical thinking and problem-solving skills either individually or in small groups or in a larger group to work through something subject matter related in real time, and then you can help them if they need it. And then this is kind of an extension of what we just talked about. Apply it. Create a real life situations to see if students can solve a problem in that context using what they learned during your class. The Socratic seminar is another really great tool to use, but this again requires adequate planning and time. I've tried to do something similar to this called a fishbowl discussion before, and you absolutely have to frame it correctly, provide adequate time, and make sure that students know that it's coming up and that you give them adequate time prior to that upcoming class session to prepare for it, so that when you go into it, everyone feels that they are ready to go. So in a Socratic seminar, students are asked questions to one another about an essential question, a topic, or selected text. They discuss, they do not debate. The questions initiate a conversation that continues with a series of responses and additional questions. And students learn to formulate questions that address issues to facilitate their own discussion and arrive at a new understanding. As the facilitator, you're really there to just help guide and provide help as needed, but the students really take ownership of it. And when it's done well, it is really amazing to see what they can do. You can also do peer instruction. Perhaps the most accurate way to check for understanding is to have one student try to teach another student what they learned. You could do this with a small group. You could do this peer-to-peer. It really just depends on what you want to do in that class session that day. Okay, so to recap, what did we do? We examined ideas for building checking points during the VCS and OCS. And you're going to identify at least 2 strategies to implement in your sessions to check for students' learning and understanding. One second here. She put together a poll. Let me see if I can access that here. Aha. Okay. So I'm going to share a poll with you. Please go ahead and select at least 2 strategies you would like to implement in your sessions to check for students' learning and understanding. We have open-ended questions, exit ticket, pop quiz, true false statements, think, pair, share, 3, 2, 1, keywords, 3 takeaways, debate, and KWL chart. So I will give you about 30 seconds to a minute to put your responses in, and then we'll go ahead and take a look. Okay, only about 30, there we go. We're up to 57%. I love that I can see the percentage. So doing something like this in your class, like setting up a poll ahead of time as a checkpoint is really great because you can actually monitor in real time how many have participated and ensure giving everyone adequate time. Okay, so I'll give about 10 more seconds and then we'll go ahead and look at the results. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and share the results. Can everyone see these? If you can see me, just give me a thumbs up. I see Professor DeVito nodding. Okay, great. So it looks like we have the majority wanting to try key takeaways, about 30%, think, pair, share, pop quiz, exit ticket, open-ended questions. So great. There's a lot of really good things that you can do, and absolutely like beyond what we've discussed here today. There are a myriad of other options that you have. Okay. So we're going to end with, in terms of participatory efforts for US students, we're going to finish out with completing our KWL chart in the Jamboard. What did I learn about this topic? So let me go ahead and stop sharing, and I will grab the link for you all again. And put it in the chat and take away the do not write here option, because that's where I want you to write now. Okay. Okay, so there's the link. I'm going to delete this. And please, I'm going to give you about a minute or so. Go ahead and write what you learned about this topic in this L column here. All right, so we have one. There are many ways to make this work. You can use as many as you want, mix it up to secure student understand. Yes, absolutely. I think that really, you have so many options now in your toolbox, like playing around with them, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't, just explore and try things out. More awesome CFU techniques and possible ways to combine different techniques. Great options for keeping students engaged and ensuring they understand the material. I think one takeaway that I have in terms of using these is it can be really easy to be like formulaic in the way that you lay out your course lesson. Like you're changing content and maybe some of the check-ins, but you don't change up all of them. You don't necessarily have to, but I think trying to keep it fresh, not in an overwhelming manner, but doing things differently, maybe not every week, but maybe, you know, switching around, having an exit ticket every week to maybe every other week and doing something else at the end. Just like keeping it fresh for yourself and for students is just a really good way to keep them from getting bored. Yeah, there are a lot of fun ways to get students involved with this. I learned that I would like to try the exit ticket and how my students would benefit from it. Okay, fantastic. All right, we're going to go back to our presentation. Really? Okay, 1 second. Professor Sunny asked, is there a good platform that you can recommend for creating exit tickets? So you can utilize any of the templates that we have in Spoke that I'll show you in just a sec. One way that I've liked is just doing a Google form. You can make it prettier than just the basic one. And also just because it collects all the student information at the end in that spreadsheet, I just find to be super, super easy to use with students, and then for collecting the data and acting upon it myself. So checking for understanding. Everyone's going to benefit. Make sure that you plan your lesson, add those check-in points, and then monitor learning at all times. It can be a little overwhelming at first, especially because you're trying new things. So you might want to practice this out with a family member, a fellow instructor, a friend. Can always reach out to someone at the Light Center to discuss if you'd like to. Again, as Dr. Shawaheda always says, we're just an email away. Absolutely. So Professor DeVito is asking, can an exit ticket generate a report on who participated? If, again, going back to Google Forms, just because that's what I've typically used, you can have the students enter their name and have to enter their email address so that you can absolutely track. You just have to make it a required question that has to be answered in the form. Okay, so I'm going to talk about, just because this ties in with what we addressed in this session today, and then I will show you how to access those resources in Spoke. So Please attend our upcoming Y series, Reducing Teacher Talk Time, Creating Moments for Students, presented by Dr. Cynthia Azari. That's going to be October 10th, 2022. We have an 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time options, and you will be getting an invite for that sent out soon. So thank you for attending. This is our email. Fortunately, I do not have the link for the form. But again, I'm going to go ahead and show you how to access those resources in Spoke. And I think that I did not actually copy and paste it into the right window, but that is okay. So when I log in, I see, and Professor Sunny, I'll answer your question in just a second. Mine goes straight to the admin portal. So when you log in, it'll go straight to the learning portal, and this is what you will see. Oh, look at all these ones that I didn't do. Okay, so if you go to resources up here in the top left, and then you go right to downloadables, this is what you want for those templates. And you scroll down to checking for understanding templates. We have here for 321 in a PowerPoint and a PDF. We have a debate worksheet that can be copied and modified. We have a debate template for a Google Doc format. We have keywords, Light Center template. Oh boy, hang on here. The KWL one for PDF and PowerPoint. Same for the Light Center. Problem and solution graphic organizer, takeaways template. Okay, so Dr. Chowheda basically created one for everything that we did, and then there are 3 exit ticket templates there as well. So in both PDF and typically PowerPoint, there are also some Word doc options there as well. So please go in and explore. There's a total of 20 resources. There's a lot of things there for you to play around with and pull from. If you have trouble accessing these, please shoot me an email directly. I'll put my email in the chat. And what I can do is I can create a quick like instructional video in Zoom on how to access it and just send it out to you that way. Okay, so let me remember what my email address is here. So again, please reach out if you have any questions to the Light Center or reach out to me, specifically me, about accessing these resources. Before we go, I'm going to answer Professor Sunny's question in the chat and then open up the floor for any other questions because we do have time. Do any of you use any CFU techniques that also promote a healthy competitive spirit? Sorry, football player speaking out of me. So I'm going to go ahead and actually open up the floor for those. Do any of you use CFUs that help create a competition with students in a healthy manner and positive manner? I do, but want more. Quizzes.com. Okay. From Dr. Sunny. I have done Jeopardy, which sometimes I feel like is what I used is like super archaic, but it can get students competitive. You can do it with Kahoot, I believe, and actually put them in teams. Could do a scavenger hunt. Could do some sort of relay race. I don't know how you do that online, but there's got to be a way. So please, absolutely explore, share ideas, all that stuff. Online battleship game. Oh, I love that. Very cool. Okay. Any questions before we go ahead and end this session this evening? Okay. Thank you all for oh, yeah. Go ahead.
The battleship game, where do we find it, or what is it called?
Yeah, Professor Lipo, do tell.
It's been a while. I'll have to find it, but I broke students into teams and each team was responsible for one of the ships and you played against the computer. So each team took a turn firing.
Yeah, please forward me that if you would. It sounds interesting.
It's very simple. It's battleshiponline.org.
Okay. All right, and I can inject questions, class questions in there as far as how they decide who gets to shoot.
Well, you could. I used it as just as the strategy classes were starting, just to get our minds going in that direction.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. Well, thank you.